Well, today's special. I'm excited. We have, I think this is you're our first guest.
Really?
You really
Like
are on the
non-S
S
Collective
Collective
member?
Correct. Yeah, you are not on the payroll. Yeah, I don't know if we talked about that. We're
Yeah,
not paying.
I get to take a ride on one of these, any of them.
That's fair.
Yeah.
That's fair. But no, so I'm extremely excited to have you as our first guest. I think that let's see, you've got a fantastic YouTube channel. You've got Emadfications. You've got some great media with the Instagram. You've done I don't know how many videos with I don't know how many different cars. You've got quite an eclectic taste when it comes to cars, and I think that's fantastic.
Yeah.
We've been friends for what? It's over a decade now.
Yeah, I've known each other, but I think friends more like short term or.
Yeah, tolerated.
known
For
of you.
short term is toleration.
But
yeah.
I didn't live here for a long time after I met you originally.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
But I think it was like 4 years now,
crazy.
4 years.
Yeah,
Minimum.
yeah. And then you throw a Gene short party, a Jort party.
I did throw a George party. Well,
So that's
my brother did.
qualifications.
Yeah. Were you there?
No.
No. I don't remember you being there. I would
I
remember
stopped
those
at
legs.
the door. Mine weren't short enough. Yeah. Stopped.
Or were they too short? And that was going far. It was just a strip.
You know, it was a phase.
It was a strip around your waist. That's it.
Oh my gosh.
Picture that, everybody.
Wow. Really excited to have you on the show.
Yeah. Glad to be here. I'm excited. I like talking about cars, but not necessarily always about cars, but people who like cars. And I think we always find stuff in common, and we always find stuff to shoot the SHIT out of. So yeah.
We'll have to bleep that out, even though you spelled it.
SH exclamation mark T.
There it is. Moving on.
Yeah.
I like it. Well, sweet. Well, thanks for waking up early.
Yeah, no, this is awesome.
Yeah?
Yeah, no coffee. I'm raw dogging it. Is
You
that what
are
call it?
raw
Yeah.
dogging. Yeah. That's fine. That's fine. We're going to see how it plays out.
Yeah.
Well, very cool. Well, we're coming off of, let's see, last weekend was Cars and Coffee.
Yeah.
I know you were out there. We had actually, it was cool to see so many people out there because I was nervous. It was at G2 Motorplex. I thought it was going to be too far for a lot of people because it's kind of out there, right?
Yeah, it is, yeah.
DFW, we're used to driving, 30, 45 minutes. That's normal. But when it's in a direction that has nothing else,
yeah.
I was worried, but I thought the turnout was fantastic.
Yeah, it was funny because I came with my friend because I wanted to make a video out of it.
Yeah.
I'll dive into my opinions of the
Yeah.
event because it was amazing. But my buddy lives in Anna, so apparently Anna's huge because I picked him up and no, actually he lives in Aubrey. I apologize.
Okay.
It's one of the A suburbs of North Dallas. It's almost Oklahoma actually. But I was like, yeah, dude, I live in Plano, and I was like, I'll come get you in Aubrey, and then we'll drive to Anna. It's close. Nope. Got to his house 45 minutes later, and I typed it into navigation. I was like, how is it 40 minutes from your house? He lives on 380. And I was like, this is actually, so we started driving, and I was like, this is actually closer to my house than it is to your house.
So it was a cruise and a movie.
Yeah, it was a one-man cruise. No, but I agree. That event, I don't even know how to summarize it because I don't want to over-glorify it, but I think it was one of the coolest, if not the coolest Cars and Coffee I've ever been to. And it's not just because there was cool cars there, but being in that atmosphere, like I was talking to Barry about this afterwards because he hadn't been to a Cars and Coffee in 10, 15 years.
Wow. Okay.
And he's a car guy, but he kind of grew out of it because he was raised in a family, and now we're all a little older, and we're like, hey, we have time now.
Wow.
But he was like, I think the bar was set really high for him. But I think part of it is just being in that environment. It's like I said, not just the fact that you see really cool cars, but hearing audibly, hearing all those race cars constantly, people revving and nobody complaining about it.
Yep.
But it was fairly well organized. I think there was some pushback on entrance, like people splitting between the spectators and all that.
Yeah.
But I don't think I'm ever going to go to a Cars and Coffee that was, the setting was so cool.
Yeah.
So it's a pretty high bar.
I love that. I think that's a great assessment of it. To me, it's the same thing, right? Looking at cars is fantastic. Seeing them all together is fantastic. But seeing them do what they're supposed to do, that's what it's about for me. So getting to hear, like you said, to hear them just ripping on the track, and some cars that you wouldn't normally, let's say, give your attention to, you see it on track, you're like, oh, man.
Yeah. Like I love the Veloster N. I've always been a fan of the N line, not N line, but the N cars from Hyundai. But there was people while the Veloster was taking off. I was standing with people, and people are like, "Why does that thing sound so good?" Or like, "Veloster shouldn't sound this good." I was like, "Yeah, you guys have been sleeping on this."
Sleeping on it. Yeah. Shout out to CJ.
Yeah.
That guy, that Velociter, he works here.
Yeah.
So he you probably noticed his pink helmet as well, right?
Oh, I did not.
Dude's a menace on the track. Short little story: when we went to DKC, we all have black and white helmets. He's got a pink one. So when you're in an open, like a shift cart, you don't know who's coming up on you.
Yeah,
You don't
exactly.
really care. You see that pink helmet, bro? That's a game changer.
Get out of the way.
No. You do whatever it takes to not get lapped. That guy's coming in. He's coming hard.
Good. Okay.
Oh, he's good. He's
Front-wheel
good.
drive car too, with a decent amount of power. So I would have loved to ride along in that because I've never actually tracked a front. Well, no, Mazda Speed 3. I had a Mazda Speed 3 for a little bit, and I did autocross it.
Yeah.
And it was a little brutal coming out of corners because of the wheel hop and everything. So I'm interested to see if that Veloster feels like on a track.
You get your chance. We're trying to organize another one. I don't know if it's an HPD event, but we're trying to pick up another track day to where we can do some ride-alongs and things like that. And then I think Rassi, our media guy, is going to turn loose on the Type R too. So
yeah,
that would
I
be
need
a
to ride in
fantastic-
that thing.
We all want to ride in it.
It's still, those things are still 40K, like 120,000 miles on it.
Yeah,
And the dealerships are like, it's like 3 below MSRP.
Yeah. These are still rare.
Yeah. I think comment I think I want to make, and I was thinking about this last night, is we grew up with the car scene. We're older, obviously, than a lot of the car scene right now. And those people, a lot of the younger kids, especially under 30, maybe 25, some of them have track exposure. Some of them have exposure to the actual, like, trackability of cars, but a lot of it, it's not that accessible, right? Like no normal 20-year-old can just be like, I'm going to drop $500 on a track day.
Yep.
But for them, I imagine for a lot of younger people, that was their first time like being in that environment. Besides maybe drag races, like at the local town or something.
Yeah.
But I'm hoping that it kind of strikes a chord with a lot of people. Like, hey, maybe I should do this versus just making a parking lot queen.
Yep.
I say that I have multiple parking lot queens, but I've always had somewhat of a performance build, and I'm hoping that maybe strikes some interest in people and be like, I should do this.
Yeah.
Or just be more interested in actual performance. Not to take away from the fact that people aren't, but track performance is very different than just horsepower wars.
100%. Yeah. And that's one of those things I think people, you get it in your head. You're like, well, I need different brakes, and I need a roll cage, and then I need exhaust, and I need all this stuff. People think that they need all these things. Dude, just get to the track. Yeah. Just get there.
And then you'll realize what you actually need.
Just go drive, and that's it. You know, you're not going to be the fastest. I don't care what you put in your car. You're not. There's going to be some dude, the Veloster is a perfect example, right? You're not going to see him coming. He's just going to blow your doors off, and you're going to be upset. But I think that's the baseline. Start there. Learn how to take corners. Learn how to brake. I mean, that's an eye opener right there. When you should brake and how hard you should brake scares a lot of people.
Throttle control is massive.
Huge.
Yeah, that was the first thing I learned is you can't just keep flooring it
everywhere
right? And hope that physics doesn't exist.
Yeah, Gran Turismo's good. But
well, because like the other thing to your point though is everybody grew up with, why'd you get a big brake kit?
Yeah.
And why did you get, people are getting roll bars and strut bars and things. And you don't really understand the impact of those besides a brag sheet until you actually push your car. And people will quickly realize that maybe I should do RBF 600 fluid because sure, I got big brakes, but they can't handle the temps.
yeah, we're cooking these things.
So it's like those are the kind of things, and then all these mods that you hear about your whole life, you see people doing in movies. You're like, oh, so all of them are actually functional.
Yep.
And then that's where the replica war comes in, right? It's like,
Exactly.
why are you buying cheap brakes? Why are you upgrading to cheap brakes if they're not actually going to function? But that's a separate battle.
Yeah, that's a whole nother podcast, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah. What are you doing?
But yeah, so I loved that event. I think overall, the atmosphere was awesome. Everybody was upbeat. You sometimes go to Cars and Coffee, there just feels like everybody's judging and you see the same stuff over and over. But man, if there's more of those, I will gladly pay fees to get in.
I'll sit in that line waiting to get in.
Yeah. Yeah, so if you haven't, I don't know if there's any good videos out there of it yet, but for those of you that
I
haven't.
think we're still editing ours, but yeah, there's plenty of good coverage. Watch it.
So yeah, to summarize, like G2 is a track, and they did they have Cars and Coffee there, but there was ride-alongs, there was parade laps, there was like full-blown open track going on all at the same time. So if you want to hear sound porn, of Porsches going by. Man, I've never heard that many. Like I love Porsches. I've
Yeah.
never really driven one much. I've never really been in one, but the sound these things make is
yeah.
insane.
I always talk about they're kind of dirty.
Yeah.
Like they don't sound exotic. They don't sound. You're like, wow, that sounds special. That sounds sweet. That sounds good. Mm-mm.
Yeah.
No, they sound dirty.
It's so good.
It's a good dirty.
Yeah. I loved it. Anyway.
Yeah.
So well done.
Fantastic.
Props to you guys for doing your part. And
We appreciate it. We were happy to be part of it. You know, we got lucky. We had talked with the guys from Cars and Coffee several times, and we knew we wanted to work with them. G2 just happened to be this magic thing where they were like, hey, we've got some bandwidth here if you guys want to help out. And having a couple of connections with G2, it was really easy. They're like, well, the track's not open. And we're like, what does it take to have it open? So, you know, we volunteered, and I'll say it was our entire staff that was there.
Yeah.
Saturday, everybody that was doing everything they could to run it, make it happen. The cars that you saw going around the track, 3 of those were our own employees. And then they had reached out to friends that they race and track with, and so they got them out there. So it was like a grassroots
that's
thing.
awesome.
It was the coolest thing to be a part
yeah.
of.
Don't let it blow up into something commercial because it'll kind of take away from it. Now, I know to some degree you kind of have to, but it still feels a little DIY, and I think I like that. So, but that's just one man's opinion who shouldn't really matter. But
I'm glad you voiced it. That's fantastic. Well, so I'll segue into your other stuff. So you have a fantastic YouTube channel. You have, I think it's fantastic. I think the content, your approach, everything that you do with it, even the production, I enjoy it. Like kind of in that same vein that you're saying, it doesn't feel commercial. It definitely doesn't read like I'm being talked to. You almost feel like you're on the journey with you, and I kind of enjoy that feel, that approach that you've kind of given. And your mind, I think, is like a lot of us, where it's like, all right, we're gonna do this to this car, and then it flips, and you're like, oh, this other car over here, and I love that, right? You're not focused on one make, one model. You have no allegiance when it comes to brands.
no, not at all.
So that's always fun to watch and see what's coming next. You don't even care whether it's an EV or a combustion engine. You know, you're just like, if it goes, I wanna drive it. So
Yeah. No, I appreciate it. I've been going through kind of like a existential crisis with YouTube. You know, I started it just because I bought the EV6 a couple of years ago. I would say I was like an early adopter. I wasn't one of the first, but I was pretty early. And obviously at that time, EVs were starting to be talked about. There was mandates coming and all these kind of things. And I did it because it just fit our lifestyle at the time. I don't want to dive too much into that. But that's what kind of helped create my YouTube channel, because I come from a tuner background, and I got that EV6. And I think there was a handful out in the US, and I immediately started doing stuff to it. Now, nobody was making anything for this car, but I was like, I want to figure this out. So I researched parts in England and Germany, because Eibach was making stuff for the Ioniq 5. That was like the sister car. So I experimented a lot. So that got my channel built up. And here we are 3 years later, and I've featured my other cars and all the cars that I've had in the last 3 years on there. But recently I've been kind of in I don't want to say a lull, but I'm kind of going through like, DIY is cool, but how many people are going to watch the same like Miata content that everybody else is doing? So I'm kind of using the G2 Cars and Coffee, trying something new soon. Me and my friend Barry's gonna kind of help join and like help me out quite a bit with production, some ideas. Him and I have really good chemistry, so I think I want to shift away from just being like this DIY guy who works on his multiple projects, but shift a little over to lifestyle. And that's a hard pivot, because there's 12 billion YouTubers doing it much better than I am. But at the end of the day, sometimes I go back and watch my even recent videos, and I'm like, God, these are dull. And it's, you know, you're your own worst critic.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like, if I'm not interested in this car, why would I watch this kind of topic?
Fair enough.
And that's what I want to shift away from, because I do think that, and it's not like an ego thing. It's not like, oh, I need to be doing more cool stuff because of my cars. I am surrounded by people with cool stuff.
Yeah.
Cool cars, cool. I mean, you guys alone. And then I've got friends like Rainer with cool cars. And I'm just like, I could do more to expose people to, like, because growing up, you're always like, who are these people that hang out with these people with Ferraris and all that? And I'm not saying I'm one of those guys now, but it's kind of cool to see like friends who have access to them. Now, you don't own all these, but you're in an industry where you get to kind of do that. And For somebody younger, I want to make my channel to where like, okay, so some of this is accessible. Just because you don't own it, you can surround yourself by it and have fun with it, and not just have envy and things like that.
Yep.
So, bottom line is, him and I watched a bunch of videos the other night, the night before G2, Cars and Coffee, and we were like, okay, these are the cuts we want to do, and it's just attention. Like we discovered that my videos have long-winded me talking and not enough boom, 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 like Adult Swim stuff like we're talking about. So we're going to try something new. We'll see where it goes. But I still want to focus on my cars. I like my cars a lot. So
I think it's great. You know, it's funny. So you talk about accessibility, right? Think about when we were growing up. All we had was the Scholastic Book Fair. We were waiting for that Lambo poster, for that Ferrari poster, and that was it. There's no Cars and Coffee.
No.
I didn't know a single person who had a Ferrari. I didn't even know Ferraris were real.
Yeah.
It was a picture.
You didn't think you were ever going to see one.
No. Dude. And even magazines, right? Like there weren't like a whole lot of magazines that would kind of bring that lifestyle to you, you know?
Yeah.
So I love that. I applaud that. I think the Cars and Coffee thing, that angle, I think that's fantastic. Because like you said, you're going to have access to just a ton of vehicles. But it's in a real world setting. It's encouraging to let other people know. It's like, hey, I'm not doing, you come be a part of this.
Yeah,
you know?
And that's what it is. Like I watch a lot of YouTube channels with hypercars and exotics in them, and you just feel like, oh, this guy lives this lavish lifestyle, so I'm just gonna watch him. I'm interested. Like the way I'm looking at it is, even if you're not lavishly living, you can have fun with this kind of stuff. And not everybody who has cars like this is that like unapproachable person.
Oh yeah.
And that's one of the things that I want to focus on a little bit is personalities at car meets, because and that's why I interviewed some people.
Yeah.
It's awkward at first. You get past it.
Oh,
but at the same time, when people start talking, it's awesome. Like Chris, your employee over there.
Love him. Yep.
I'm talking to him and he starts the conversation with, oh, I'm like into drag racing. I grew up into drag. And I'm like, what's your favorite track car? Like, what would you buy as a track? He's like, I'm not really into track, but if I was, a GT3 RS. And I'm just like, okay, that's a pretty specific track car.
He knows.
Yeah. And then even just talking to you about like, you are surrounded by this stuff, and yet your favorite car is a 4Runner. But you don't like. I think those kind of things need to be exposed, because you think that somebody who's surrounded by this probably lives in this $18 million house with 12 cars, where it's not. It's accessible. Your friend probably knows somebody who is kind of involved in this world. So I don't know how to explain it, but I think making it more approachable and accessible is kind of how I want to approach it.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and that's what keeps this going, right?
Yeah.
If it was unapproachable, if it was unobtainable, nobody would want to be part of it.
Yeah.
You know, you've got to make it welcoming. You've got to make it enjoyable. You've got to give people something to aspire to look at, motivation, whatever it is, but know that it's obtainable.
Yeah.
Like you're saying, we can get a lot of people in Ferraris. In fact, this will probably blow it up, but we can get them into a Ferrari for like 70 grand. Like a nice one, a fun one.
Yeah.
Something that you'd want to take to Cars and Coffee. We can also help you spend millions, but they're not as unobtainable as people think. You've just got to figure out what it is you want out of a car, and there's a cool car there.
Yeah.
There's a cool car there, especially in the budget. I guess the Miata, right? That's a perfect example. Everybody sees that and they're like, oh, we're going to go spec racer. We're going to do this full Miata build. And man, I remember those things were like $2,000. They're going up now, but that's such a fun car to drive.
It is. And so I wanted to touch on the 70K Ferrari, right?
Yeah.
So one of the things I have friends that are looking at cars that are older, like a 70K Ferrari is what, maybe a 2000s model, 2010s model. Somewhere in there, right?
It might be a little
older.
A little older.
Yeah, so I think one of the biggest things that I hear all the time is like, sure, I can afford a 70K car, but I need a bank to finance it. So I don't even know the answer to how. I know a lot of people that are at that level are paying cash or whatever means they have. But there's not a lot of banks that are going to give you 70K for a car that's 20 years old, right?
30-year-old Italian,
So yes, they are approachable, but I think there's some education there too. Like how do you buy an older exotic without having cash? And I don't know the answer.
Yeah, I'm not handing out any kind of financial advice.
No, I'm not either. I'm just like, I think it's more about, is it actually obtainable? Because sure, it's 70K, but does it have to be 70K in cash?
I'll break that down then. When I say obtainable, there are, I don't know how many platinum F-150 trucks that pass you on the highway.
Yeah.
they're $80,000 to $90,000.
Yeah, but you can finance those. That's what I'm saying.
You can.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is, if you want it, you can get it.
Oh, yeah.
You can find a way. So there's got to be somebody out there. It might be a higher percent than you want to pay.
Yeah.
But there's ways to get in there. Is all that I'm saying. Don't think that boat has sailed. You know, you saw what was it? We saw a 458 Speciale go for over $700,000 the other day, and I'm like, what? Like that's a car I wanted, you know, and I'm like, all right. So you want unobtainable? Start throwing numbers like that. I'm like, oh, maybe I'm not getting one of those. But there are plenty of other cars, Ferraris included. I mean, one of my cars, I drive that Jaguar, right? The XKR.
Yeah.
Dude, those things tanked.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the sticker on mine was like $110,000. I didn't pay anywhere near it.
Yeah.
You know, you can get into those cars, and that's a V8 supercharged. It's got 515 horsepower. I mean, that thing is a monster. Heated steering wheel. 42 now. Heated steering wheel's nice.
Your cold, old, fragile hands.
Dude,
need it.
I don't even get in until it's been running about, I don't know, 4 or 5 minutes. Like, that wheel needs to be warm when I get in. I'm not even touching
Do you have
cold
remote
leather
start?
anymore.
Is it remote start?
No, I have to go out there and do it, but you know, we don't talk
A trip
about
to
that.
Car Toys will take care of that.
Oh, man.
Or just here. But what that does is it remind me of, so when I lived in Colorado, I went through cars a lot faster than I did when I lived here, since I've been living here. And the first thing a lot of people would ask, mostly my wife, not me, they would never ask me about it, is how do you guys just keep affording to change cars? And I'm like, you know, all three of my cars put together probably cost as much as your Tahoe, like the one Tahoe you have.
And that's what I'm saying.
Yeah. Like my Mercedes was $40K. Like I didn't pay the $70K MSRP on it. And my Miata was $5K. So it's just like I'm like, yeah, you think that you're spending a lot of money on this stuff. And it is a lot. I'm not saying that it's not a lot of money. It is money. But when I hear that criticism, it's like, how do you guys do this? Like, and why do you do it? I'm like, because you spent the same I did on my 3 hobby cars on your one Tahoe that you used to go to Aldi or whatever. So it's like, sure, it's comfy, but like, so it's not unattainable. Like, you just figure it out, I guess. I don't know.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it.
I say figure it out. Just go get a job and just make money and
man.
be fine. Yeah. Or just be born into a rich family. Like, that's all you need.
Those options.
Or get adopted. But anyway.
Yeah. All right, then. Okay, so let's talk about the Mercedes, because that was a route that most people, you know, you checked a couple of boxes, right? You've got a Euro. People are like, yeah, that's awesome. You did a very Euro cut. You went black, you know, which to me, it's like, all right, cool.
We can talk about that, but
we can change it. Yeah, that's
no,
an option.
I know. Yeah, so I have a E400 wagon, and I grew up like when we lived overseas. My dad used to get work cars, and they had a contract with GM. So in the '90s, GM had a bunch of wagons, Chevys and stuff like that. So we used to get company cars that my dad would get, and they were always a lot of times were wagons, and just grew up with them. Kind of loved the proportions of them.
Oh yeah.
Never grew out of it. Always loved wagons, and now they're a little bit of a forbidden fruit, so it makes you want them even more.
100%.
But proportionally speaking, I think they look better than any SUV. They, you know, there's cool SUVs out there, but wagons just look better. But anyway, I wanted a wagon. I had a Buick Regal Tour X. That was a car that existed from 2018 to 2020.
I loved that one.
Oh, it was awesome.
So unique.
Horribly boring power plant.
Yeah.
But what a cool looking car. Opel
so
designed.
unique. Yeah.
Very German looking. It didn't look like a Buick. So I actually really liked it. My wife loved that car. Really good daily. And I always sold it and then wanted to get back into a wagon. And our wagon options are limited unless you go old school.
Yeah.
So that's where I ended up with. I couldn't afford an E63 AMG. I couldn't afford an RS6. My choices were going to be back into a Tour X, a Audi A4 all-road.
Okay.
Or
I love the all roads.
I do
think those
too.
are
I love them.
fantastic. Yeah.
They just don't really drop in value a lot compared to the regular A4s. Like the regular A4s drop pretty fast, but all roads don't as much. And then I had really bad luck with my S4. So I just kind of got soured on Audi, even though I know they're good cars.
Yeah.
They're all Germans are kind of unreliable. So, so I ended up, I wasn't even really looking for an E400 because I honestly didn't really know they existed. I know that sounds really weird, but like everybody knew the E63.
Yep.
And then somebody was like, you know, there's an E400 and E450. And I looked it up and I was like, as a car guy, I'm kind of insulted that I didn't know this existed properly. Like I never researched it, but I also thought they were unattainable. And then you look and you're like, wait a minute, like you can get them in the 30s and 40s and you can finance them.
Love that word.
I went to Louisville, and Honda had one sitting there, and then sat there for months. I watched it. I was like, I'm not gonna do anything. I had my S4, and then my S4 started crapping out. I was like, I'm gonna do something. And I didn't want to buy it. And then another one popped up in Plano at this one of those crappy mom and pop dealerships that buy like salvage cars and so on.
Yeah.
That was also black. But it was a higher package, but it was making all sorts of noise that I didn't like.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Oh, yeah.
So I ended up getting this, and that's how I ended up with this. Like, the choices are limited. Honda was desperate to get rid of it. They gave me a good trade-in for my S4, and I ended up with this wagon. Black is not my color of choice. I like black cars. I just don't want black cars.
Yeah,
But I
yeah.
somehow always end up with them because I always like these unique cars that are hard to find. So I wasn't like nationwide shopping for an E400. Kind of just right time, right place.
Gotcha. I think the black works. It's awesome.
Yeah,
You've got new wheels on it right now. The kind of like bronzy. They look fantastic.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Yeah.
I've been through a lot with that car. Not a lot of people are modding them.
Yeah.
And it's been a lot of experimenting. And not going to say that financially it's been a good decision, but the end
never
result
are.
is good. It's unique.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I do like it. It's quick. It's not like fast, but it's quick.
Yeah, that's not what you got it for.
Yeah. It is nice to have, though.
Yeah. It helps.
It's a twin turbo V6. It's not like going to rock your socks off, but
Yeah.
it moves. So,
I love it. I love it.
but yeah.
Sweet. Okay. So what about the Miata? Because you've been in and out of several. So I remember the white Miata. It was like white silver. Had the graphics down the door.
Yeah, it was the factory. It was the MX. It was the 2013 MX-5 Club.
That's what it
Miata
was.
Club edition, and that was probably my second favorite car I've ever owned out of the 30 cars that I've had. I had it for the second longest, actually, 5 years. I kept that car for 5 years, which is
That's
incredible.
why it's the only one I remember.
Yeah.
You move so quick.
Yeah.
You know?
The last 3 years I had it, it was supercharged, and I can't tell you how much fun that car is, and I can't tell you how much I regret not using it for what I designed it for. Now in Colorado, we took canyon drives constantly, and it was my favorite thing to do. Like, my happy place to this day is this canyon road in near Boulder that we just took our Miatas to all the time, and I have not been able to replicate that experience probably until I get onto a track. But canyons are free, tracks are not.
Yeah.
So
Fair enough. Fair enough.
But that Miata was it was awesome. I moved here and I realized I was like, maybe I want like a V8. Like, Texas is V8 territory. You need power here, big highways. The Miata had power, but I just wasn't utilizing it for any. I wasn't enjoying it as much as I did in Colorado. So then I went through the Corvette, the C5 Corvette, and then I had the Audi B6 S4. And then I'm back in a Miata. And I'm back in a Miata because the consumables are so cheap.
Yeah.
And a high mileage NC Miata, and I have an NC. It's a very polarizing car. Some people hate it. Some people don't think it's a real Miata. Yet everybody's eyes are opening up slowly to it. Bought it for dirt cheap, put $2,000-$3,000 into it, and it's almost exactly where I want it to be. I've got quite a few things to do still.
Yeah.
But my goal with that car is to actually take it to the track.
I love that.
Yeah, cheap track project, not a 458. It's going to be an under 10K track project. So
That's fantastic.
yeah, you can have fun with cheap cars, and the Miata is a
Absolutely.
really good way to do it. So
Nice.
yeah.
All right.
And what else do I have? The EV.
Yeah. I know it's funny. So at Cars and Coffee, I know that was one of your questions as you were walking around asking people. It's like, what was it? It was, what's your daily? What's your
DWT.
weekend? And then
Daily.
what's your track?
Yeah.
And then after we all felt comfortable and we were happy with our answers, you came in and you go, oh yeah. What do you think about electric cars? So you just decided to just completely just kick rocks in everything. So. Tell me about your experience with that.
Yeah, so I'm on the side of EVs that they work for some people and they just don't work for some people. I think they got politicized, and that's what made it very polarized. When everybody felt like they were being forced to buy them, you never win when you're being forced to buy something, right? And I think that left a bad taste in a lot of people's mouth. I think a lot of people that end up driving an EV, if you're not substituting your V8 Camaro SS 1LE track build for an EV, that's not what the intent is, generally speaking. Now, there's performance EVs coming out, and that's a completely different argument. But I think there's a time and a place for an EV in many households. You don't have to buy one, but I do think it works for a lot of people. And that's kind of where we were. We were like, I'm not like a huge EV advocate, and I'm not a massive environmental. I mean, I care about the earth, but I also understand the impact of EVs and mining and all that kind of stuff. And I don't want to get into that. So I didn't buy it because I was trying to change the world slowly, one person at a time. Although it's nice to not have to pollute or whatever you want to call it. But then you've got mining, so two arguments. But I think to me, EVs are a good utilitarian kind of having around the house in case it works for your lifestyle, and it does work for us. We drive 90% of the time within DFW, 95% of the time, and we haven't spent a dime on gas. Everybody's like, oh, it's because you pay so much more for the car. I was like, well, my payment's smaller than my Mercedes payment.
Yeah.
And we got the EV credit and all that kind of stuff. So I think EVs, to me, there's a spot for it in many households. You just kind of have to get past the mentality of it, and also just remember that it's not there to replace that feel that you get with a manual transmission or anything like that. But it's a really good supplement.
I think that's a great way to do it. It's another tool in the toolbox, so to speak. Like, you're not trying to replace the screwdriver; you're getting a different one.
That's what people don't get. People just think that if you buy an EV, you're just that person. That
you're now an electric.
And no.
So we talked about it. You know, my heartbreak. I was really excited. I thought for our shop and running around errands, because we travel quite a bit within town and DFW, if you will, getting parts, looking at other vehicles, meeting customers, clients, things like that. So to have a car that we could just throw the keys to and everybody could run around, the electric thing kind of appeals to me, because we have V12s, we have V8s, we have some of these cars that some people would say they're not the cleanest running vehicles, right? So it's like, if we did all of our, let's say, chores, all of our errands and everything in an electric vehicle, kind of like you said, we're not going to single-handedly save the planet, but it'll help.
Yeah.
You know?
I think there's also a utility aspect to it. In my 2-year video for my EV6, I focus a lot more on the convenience of having an EV. And a lot of it is small things that you don't think about, such as remote start. Like, I don't have to open my garage. I can remote start the car. I get in, and there's no heating up. Like, you can literally just get in that car and just slam it and just drive hard if you want.
Can't do that in every car?
Well, you shouldn't do it on a very, very, very cold start. So there's like little things like that. I think the other part of it is the torque is awesome. Running around town, less mechanical parts is so much fun, because you just want to pass somebody. There's no shifting, and it sucks the personality out of it. But at the same time, you're like, I can just haul ass.
And that's it. Those 0 to 60 times are so frustrating these days. You see these like supercars, and they're putting up, we'll say high 2s, and then you see an electric vehicle and it just smokes, and you're like, it doesn't it hurts.
See, and mine does like 4.3, 4.4, something like that. Maybe 4.5. And
for an SUV.
Yeah, for a 4,000 something
it's a
pound.
mid, but still,
it's a crossover.
Yeah.
But it's in sport mode, the torque is so good. It's like 400 something torque technically, and just running around town, I don't take my ICE cars that much. Sometimes the Miata, just when it's nice out. But the EV is my go-to for daily use, because it's just low fuss. We haven't spent. The only money we've spent in 3 years on that car is new tires and a new 12-volt battery, which was like $180. Wow. I literally haven't spent a dime on that car.
How many miles do you think you've put?
We have 40K on it now.
That's impressive.
Yeah, like zero maintenance. Now, of course, I think the other part of EVs is there's a lot of insecurity about what happens when your battery goes out. Dude, Tesla batteries have been lasting 14, 15 years, and they have like 30% degradation. So you've got 70% of your battery left after 10, 14 years.
Still enough to get you around town.
Yeah. I don't plan on keeping any car for 10 years, let alone an EV. So I think if you can make it 10, 12 years with an EV battery and you have to replace it, by then things are probably going to be a little bit cheaper, and you're probably not going to want that car anyway. So I don't know. There's a million arguments against the whole battery insecurity, but enough data is now being calculated from Teslas that have been around for over a decade of state of charge, which is how much depletion on the main battery.
Okay.
And I think those myths are starting to get a little busted, and people are starting to open their eyes now.
Yeah.
Tesla's becoming more politicized now because of the actions of people, but I think there's a massive EV market. And I think one thing I always hear is the EV market's shrinking. I'm like, well, it's not shrinking, it's slowed down.
Yeah.
But it's still growing.
Yeah, I think it's
EV adoption is still
opposite.
happening.
Yeah, no.
And it's just slowed down. It plateaued. So it's still kind of growing. It's just not growing at the pace it was.
Yeah.
And I think the other part of EVs, and sorry, I know we've been on this tangent for a while, is I'm tired of these. Why does every EV that makes it to the US have to be a blobby SUV? Like, give me a sedan, give me a coupe, give me a hatch. They keep on teasing this GTI EV, and I'm like, just bring it.
Yeah.
But it's not going to come to the U.S. because we'll get the ID.5, some blobby SUV that looks like a frog. And it's just EV adoption in my head would be better if there was more options. Now, people probably disagree. They'd be like, well, for the companies to make it and bring it here, people need to buy it. I'm like, well, how? I don't know. It's a double-edged sword. How are they going to know if people are going to buy it if they don't exist?
Yeah.
And right now, there's not a lot of enthusiast EVs that are in the U.S. Now, BYD in China is killing it. They've got coupes, they've got hatches.
Price point, though, too.
Yeah.
Price point's a thing. You know, we all wanted the Audi wagon, right? They're like, okay, you can have the RS6, but they priced it so dang high that all of us are like, hey, might as well keep it in Europe.
Yeah. It's just like, give me an entry level. I don't need 300 range and a performance EV. Give me 250, 200, 220. I don't care. But give me a hatch that I can just rip around. Like, EVs have so much torque that they'd be so much fun around a track.
Yeah.
And they are. Like, people do the Taycons and things like that. So I just think they need to be a little bit more accessible to the enthusiast crowd versus just, oh yeah, my dad bought an EV SUV, you know, that kind of conversation. So, but the
nice little hot take there. I like that.
I think the Ioniq 5N changed things a lot.
Okay.
I mean, it got car of the year from a lot of people the last couple of years, and people are like, if this is the future, like, it's looking okay for EVs.
Yeah.
Because they're doing the fake shifts, and yes, most people are going to be opposed to it at first. But at the end of the day, these people are driving and they're like, yeah, this is cool.
Yep.
Like,
and that's it. Yeah. That's it. As long as you're smiling.
Yeah.
That's funny.
So yeah, I think there's a time and a place. I'm not saying that everything should be EV by any means, because I have a manual and I have a normal ICE car. So
yeah. Yeah, you're doing it all, man. Look at you.
Yeah.
I love it. I appreciate you stopping by, man. Yeah. This has been fantastic. Yeah. Any future plans that we should know of before we?
No, I think my focus is shifting over to fun content creation, and then the other thing is just getting my car on a track. I miss it so much, and if you can do it, do it. Yep. Even if it's just half a track day. Take your dad's Impala out there. I don't care what you do. Just bring it out there and have some fun. And I don't know how to emphasize that message more because it makes me hypocritical because I don't do it a lot, but I think people need to enjoy their cars more.
Fantastic.
And this is the perfect example of it.
Yep.
So you guys are living in it.
We're trying. We're trying. Awesome. Well, thank you, man. Really appreciate it.
All righty. Have a good
Sweet.
one.